Say hello to a new friend on an old road. Take a 2-lane trip of memories into mysteries unknown. Come along for the ride. Jim Hinckley's America. Jim Hinckley's America.
Hey, good morning, mi amigos. Nothing starts the day better than a good cup of coffee and a little bit of music there from Joe and Woody and, well, the boys of the road crew. Hey, if you need a theme song for your road trip or a little bit of inspiration for that road trip, check out their music, roadcrew66.com. Well, it's kind of a spring type day, I guess you might say. It's what we've been doing all winter here in Kingman. 36 degrees this morning. Should be another nice and sunny day. We've got quite a few things going down the pike. I'm working on putting together a small video for our YouTube channel. I'll let you know on the Jim Hinckley's America website when that's up and going. We made a little trip out to Chloride, Arizona, an old mining camp north of Kingman. But I followed the old highway. And, well, that's going to be a bit of an adventure I'll share with you upcoming episodes. For today's program, we're headed to Atlanta, Illinois, the American Giants Museum. I'm not sure if that's where Joel Baker is at this morning, but let's find out. Hey, good morning, Joel. How are you?
Good morning. I'm well. How are you?
I'm doing good. Every day is good. Some are just better than others.
True.
Hey, where are you at this morning, Joel?
I actually live in Denver, Colorado. So I get to travel out to the museum in Atlanta, Illinois, a few times a year. But yeah, I'm home in Denver.
Thank you for taking time this morning to do this. When we met at the Miles of Possibility Conference, I really was fascinated with your program. I've been a follower of your YouTube channel for a while, and well, I've had a curiosity about these Muffler Men, these giants, for a long time. So you just really piqued my interest with this. How may I ask? I know a lot of people start out collecting stamps or postcards or salt and pepper shakers or even barn find automobiles. How does a fella get started collecting giant fiberglass statues?
You know, it didn't start right away with collecting. It started with the interest, and that was back in 2011. And I was on a road trip for my job. I used to travel a lot. I worked in media, and we were in Florida doing an event. And I believe I was trying to figure out why there was a large headless dinosaur near Brooksville, Florida, and that led me to the internet. Roadside America, which is a great resource for those who want to see quirky, odd roadside attractions on their travel. And they had some information about it and why it was standing there all these years without a head. And that is when I also stumbled on their little banner there that said something about the Muffler Men. And there was a few nearby in Dade City and Zephyr Hills. And I went and visited those giants. They were some of my first Muffler Men sightings. And that really piqued my interest. I'd never heard of them before. They seem to be relatively unknown, except by a small group of people and road travelers. And the history fascinated me, how you have all these giants across the entire United States that all resemble each other very closely. And there were so many of them. And I think that's where it started. I just started, seeing when I could stop at one on my travels. And it wasn't till probably the next year or 2 years later that the thought even crossed my mind that you can purchase these and start collecting them. So it's been a journey. It's been a journey.
I, of course, am a little bit older, so I remember these different configurations along the road. But there was a book out several years ago. I believe it was Left Hand Up, Right Hand Down, something of that
Mhm.
nature. And I happen to know the fellow who wrote that book in passing through his best friend's father lives here in Kingman. And that kind of got me looking at them in a different way. And then more recently, like I say, I stumbled on your website, and I got to give you credit. Your YouTube channel is it's kind of an Indiana Jones sort of adventure for me. But your video about the Santa Claus at the Texas automobile dealership, that really grabbed my attention. I don't know how you ever found such obscure historic footage, but kudos on that one.
Yeah, that was that almost happened by accident. As I do a YouTube try to do a YouTube video every Sunday, and I think what happened with that was I normally talk about international fiberglass. I talk about the Muffler Men. I pretty much stay on topic, but my name is American Giants, and that is a little bit of a broader field. Thankfully, that I can explore other things. And I kept getting that picture sent to me by those who consume my content, and over and over and over every Christmas, I get that picture, that really amazing, unique picture of this massive Santa sitting on the Porter Chevy dealership in Dallas. And really, the video was my way of letting everyone know, yes, I know about him, and here's some more information. And I think I spent maybe a day digging deep on the internet and the archives to find some more than what people were sending me, and I stumbled on that actual archival footage, and which really added to the story. The day, so that it was pretty much a space filler. It was after Christmas when I released that, and the day I released it, I was out of cell phone service all day. I posted it in the morning, and then I went into the Rocky Mountains for the day. I came back out and got cell service about 7 p.m. And I looked at my phone and I saw that it said 64 next to the views, and I thought, oh, that didn't do very well. And then I realized it was telling me 64,000, which was, by far more than I'd ever received before. And of course, it went on to get over 1 million views. So it really went viral. And a lot of people became aware of, what I do, and the research with the Giants. And it really helped. A lot of people were very thankful they'd found me because of that video, and continue to follow me. So that was a big plus. I'll do an update next Christmas on the same topic and get a few facts correct that I messed up on.
Well, that God, when you start getting into this history stuff, that's common. I mean, you just can't help it.
Right.
There's because it was reported wrong in the first place, or it's recollections, things of that nature. Is international fiberglass really the cornerstone for the whole Muffler Men giant fiberglass advertising? Would
It
that be?
is for the Muffler Men, for sure. And it started out with a guy named Pruitt, who preceded International Fiberglass, and he's actually the one that hired a guy named Bill Swan to create a Paul Bunyan figure, and that was when the first Muffler Man was sculpted. Those features that we all have come to recognize and call Muffler Men today was made in 1963. And by the end of that year, Pruitt put an advertisement in the paper that was basically selling the whole business and all the molds he had made, which was not just Muffler Man. At that point, he had made many different horses and animals, and some other figures and statues. And that's when International Fiberglass and Steve Dashew came along. It was actually Steve's dad, Stanley, who saw the ad in the paper and purchased the business for his son, or loaned him some money. And the rest is history. They got all those molds, and with the marketing skills of Stanley's secretary, they really launched international fiberglass into high gear, and the next few years were very busy ones for international fiberglass. But we should take a second to note that there was a lot of other fiberglass companies in the United States in those days that were sprouting over the same period of time that are also responsible for adding a lot of figures. So it's quite a job to figure out what was made by who. Yeah.
The first one, the Paul Bunyan, was that sold up in Flagstaff? Is that correct?
It was. And, Gabriel Aldez, you mentioned him in his book. That was, kind of some of my early reading material. My copy is very worn as I've read it over and over again. But he did a scavenger hunt in that book to flesh out the history. And, that's where that Bunyan ended up. It was ordered by a gentleman in Sacramento that was going to start a restaurant, and something fell through with the plans or the order, or he decided he didn't want it. And so the story is that Pruitt drove down Route 66 and ended up in Flagstaff at the Lumberjack Cafe, and felt it was a perfect fit, and they bought it on the spot. Now, a few years later, they actually purchased a second one from International Fiberglass. So they had two there, and those are still around at the university today.
Yeah, Northern Arizona University.
Right.
It's the Giants, for someone of my generation, it's interesting how you can see something, and when it disappears, you don't even notice. And then a few years later, when you brought this up, all of a sudden you realize something giant is missing from the landscape. Mm-hmm. But you mentioned some of the other companies. I remember, of course, Bob's Big Boy.
Right.
They were popular. The A&W Bears.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah. There was many different companies. A lot of them were small, and they're hard to figure out exactly what they made. Photographic evidence is almost non-existent. I have quite a bit on International Fiberglass, thankfully, due to years of hard work and digging. But a lot of these other companies, the big one is Fast up in Wisconsin, and some of the companies that came before it. It went by a number of different names over the years before that, but they were making Bob's. Bob's is, that's kind of the people were coming to the museum there in Atlanta, Illinois, and the big question that we got all the time from everybody is, where's your Bob's? That Bob's Big Boy is kind of what everybody thinks is the kind of the father, even though it's a small giant of these roadside figures. That's iconic, and I think it's because the company did such an amazing job of franchising. There were so many different Bobs. There was Shoney's Big Boy, and there was some in Wisconsin, and it seems like every state had a program and a slightly different name. There was Frisch's and so on, and all these companies were using the character and using quite a different fiberglass companies to make the character. And so it's really been a trail that we're still trying to piece together and get all our history right on who all was making these and in what order did they come. So we have one at the museum we finally got, and it came out of South Carolina, and it's a Shoney's Big Boy.
The oil companies, I seem to have been one of the big customers for these. Is that and it was also another thing that's interesting is this was such a short-lived period in really advertising, roadside marketing. It wasn't a real what was it, like 10, 15 years, the glory days?
Barely that. As I said, they purchased the molds in the fall of 63, and they got to work very quickly. I think by the following year, by 64 and especially 65, they were already They were already talking to a lot of these larger companies. I mentioned their marketing strategy was very strong, and that's because Stanley Dashew was a very successful businessman. He was the father of Steve Dashew, who owned the company, and Stanley was in the banking industry, and he had a secretary named Violet Winslow, who was extremely knowledgeable in marketing. And this lady really hit the ground running with getting advertisements and eyewitness reports of businesses who had used these giants and getting their testimonies into trade magazines and gas magazines and restaurant magazines and hotel. She did an excellent job of this, and it really caught the eye of all these business owners. And so it went very quickly. And by 1966, she was having conversations with the oil giants. Sinclair was one of the first ones they approached with the dinosaur. Steve actually hopped in an airplane and checked in this 8-foot Sinclair dinosaur as freight and flew to New York City to meet with Sinclair's chief marketing executives. And he remembers putting the dinosaur in the lobby of the hotel. So that was a contract they worked on very early. They actually didn't get that contract, and Sinclair ended up using they might have bought one, and they ended up using the design and having other companies make it years later. I think International Fiberglass did make a lot of the dinos, but it's unclear if they were all exclusively for Sinclair. But they did go on to do some very successful marketing campaigns with Phillips 66 and Texaco being the two really big ones, which produced literally hundreds of giants for those advertising campaigns.
It's interesting, the resurgent interest, not just Route 66, that's a big part of it, but the resurgent interest in roadside Americana has really put a focus on these giants. And it's interesting to see how some of these are being repurposed, like the one down at Uranus Fudge Company,
right,
down at his miniature golf course.
Right.
What did that one start out to be? I know it didn't start out to be Louis Keene.
Right. Well, what's happening is really a repeat of what happened in the 60s. You alluded a little bit ago about, the demise of these, and that was brought on for a few different reasons. There was a few reasons for that. You have in the early 70s, you have like Lady Bird Johnson is doing a Beautification of America program. She sees Muffler Men and billboards as eyesores, and you also have the oil crisis, which is driving up the price of resin, and you really have a clamp down on shipping rules and laws. Which meant transporting these guys and getting them delivered was really turning out to be a beast for International Fiberglass. And they basically went into another industry. They went into the construction industry using fiberglass molds for concrete. And it died out relatively quickly. And so then you have a number of years where, you just have a declining population of Muffler Men as they slowly fall apart. And you go all the way until recent times where I think partly due to, YouTube channels and social media like mine and Roadside America, and you just have this growing awareness of Muffler Men. And of course, it's not just the road trippers that are noticing this. It's the business owners, and especially the business owners on Route 66. And so in the last 5 years, you've had a lot of interest in these business owners of getting their own giant and doing really a copy of what International Fiberglass was doing in the 60s. And that's, they catered to the businesses. They would take a Muffler Man and they would modify it just the way you wanted it. You wanted a certain arm position. You wanted a certain paint job. You wanted a certain hat. You wanted a certain item it could hold. And they could customize these Muffler Men for the businesses. And now all of a sudden you have this desire from modern day businesses to do the same thing. And that kind of really ushered in a period where of the few people who had made molds from original giants, all the original molds are long gone, but they created new ones like Bruce Kennedy in California, and especially Mark Klein in Virginia. it suddenly gave business owners an opportunity to custom design their own muffler men and order them and get them up on Route 66 and in other places. So you see a resurgence completely of what was happening in the 60s, happening today with such giants as Buck Adams and the mayor that you mentioned. That has no history. He's a brand new muffler man. He
Okay.
does have a little history. His head blew off in a tornado a year or two ago, but he's brand new.
Very, very interesting. I was also surprised that all the different configurations, your presentation at the Miles of Possibility conference, the so-called muffler men in bikinis, that was one that I was not aware of.
Right.
That,
Yeah. So, and that's another great example of some of the marketing they were doing with large companies. Uniroyal, the large Uniroyal tire company, they wanted it on it, and everybody wanted a different spin. When they got involved with international fiberglass, they wanted something a little unique, something a little different than what their competitors were doing. And it was a wide open field, for creativity. And so International Fiberglass, we don't know who the sculptor was, who they hired to make the Uniroyal girl. I have my hunches, but we don't have any proof. Instead of making another muffler man with a different colored shirt and holding a different item, they made a female, and they called her Miss America in the catalog. And she came in a bikini, but you could buy a shirt and skirt that went on her. And we believe dozens of these were ordered by the Uniroyal company. She came on a trailer. You could haul her from location to location. They would advertise, a drawing, and you could guess her weight or her shoe size or whatever it was. They would put this in the paper and say, the Uniroyal gal is going to be in town for 2 weeks at such and such a store. And people would come down and get prizes and view her. And these girls just traveled around. The muffler men were often on the same program. And so it must have been a very interesting time to live in the 1965, 66, 67, and past these giants rolling down the highway on open air trailers as they went to their next destination.
can't say I remember seeing one on the highway being transported, but I definitely remember seeing them, all at locations along the road.
Mm-hmm.
Gosh darn it. Well, I'm glad that the Uniroyal girl, they decided not to go full muffler men with they forego the beard. That would have been a different kind of advertisement.
Right.
They're, of course, reproducing these now. The Porter Chevrolet brought up an interesting question for me, too. I wonder how many of these small towns had local companies that were manufacturing just one-offs. Have you run across others beside the Porter Chevrolet?
Yeah, there were many. There were many of these, business ideas in small towns, and they basically would find the nearest guy who had was an artist, and so you have a wide variety of materials being used to make a wide variety of unique giants. Santas, and other figures. The muffler men are by far the most common, and but there's definitely all these unique stories in different towns. I think. Yeah, I think in the future it's an interesting direction. I saw the success of the of the Porter Santa and how well that was received. So there's a lot of other stories we can explore of unique giants that went up, whether they were a big animal figure. But I certainly got a lot of comments after that video of unique giants. I mean, we have one right here in Denver, a giant fiberglass cowboy that's a complete one-off. Only one was made, which makes these statues kind of unique to their area and sought after.
Well, for a small business in Porter Chevrolet, I mean, I consider that even a small business. That was kind of a major investment in advertising.
Yeah. Yeah. It
I
really
mean,
was. I think that's one of the big questions in the comments is, where did they get all the money to put in such a short-lived feat? And maybe that's what makes the story so amazing and, why it got so many views because it's just an incredible story, how massive this thing is and, how many weeks and months it took to build it. Um, but people are still striving for the same thing. The human mind still works the same way, and I think that's why we see a resurgence in the Muffler Men and the business owners desiring them because they want to attract people to these large objects and start the conversation.
I've always been fascinated with marketing and advertising. Has always intrigued me, specifically with the early automotive industry, roughly 1895 through about 1920. Early advertisement and marketing just fascinates me. And these statues, there again, that Porter Chevrolet to build something big enough to sit on the roof and hold an automobile.
Hmm.
That's pretty astounding. I got to tell you, though, that is one of the scariest Santa Clauses I've ever seen. If a child is not terrified of Santa, that would have, it seems to me, that would have done it.
Right.
That's kind of a scary looking thing, you know.
Yeah, yeah. It brings up an interesting discussion, and that's it's very hard for an artist to make a figure, including Muffler Men, and have everybody like it. I've had so many people, comment even on the Muffler Men that they were terrified of them as a child, and they think they're hideous today. So you're never going to please anybody with whatever face you come up with. But there's this whole group of people like me and many others that just find all these things fascinating, no matter how scary the face may be. And I agree, it wasn't a soothing face on that giant Santa.
You've had some pretty fascinating Indiana Jones types adventures, finding these and pieces of these guys out in the woods and everywhere else.
I
Uh,
think, yeah, go ahead.
I was just going to say that's another part of this story that fascinates me as I follow your exploits.
Yeah. I think that's one of my favorite things. I did an interview with CBS Sunday Morning a few summers ago, and I remember he asked me about that, and I remember saying, that's my favorite part about all of this is the hunt. And you wouldn't think. I think people are surprised. I think they're surprised to watch my videos and find that Indiana Jones discovery element. It's not something you'd expect with a giant statue. How could something so big be hidden? And so hard to find, and yet they are. They've been sitting in barns or the farmer's field for all these years, and they're still out there undiscovered. And I really enjoy creatively telling the story and taking my audience along with me when I discover these and letting them be a part of that. And I think we saw that, in Gray, Georgia, when I discovered that Phillips 66 cowboy. And, the nice thing is now that, my subscriber base is getting bigger, I'm getting more emails and more messages from people that are giving me just enough tips and information to continue finding them. We just made another discovery of a giant lane in a farmer's field all these years and nobody had a clue. So it's very exciting, and I get to tell that story and bring it to life on YouTube. And it's fun for me and an adventure for those that are watching.
Yeah, vicarious adventure, sure. It's fun. I imagine you sometimes it's the false leads that can lead to great stories. I was working for Cars and Parts magazine, and I would often I'd stop at a gas station. I'd see just an old pickup, and I'd talk to the fellow there, and he'd give me a story about some car in a barn or somewhere out in the Tules. And sometimes those adventures were quite interesting. They weren't anything that the guy told me they were, but it was still an adventure.
Yeah. Well, that's
Uh,
the thing. There's something to be said about that. The information and the memory. It's incredible how the human the human mind works and how certain we are of the accuracy of our memories when we're talking about something that's 40, 50 plus years ago. I get so many people even now that'll make comments that they're so sure of what they remember is 100% accurate. And often it's just enough information for me to go on a really cool hunt and find something. But if it's often completely different than they remember, whether the name of the company where it was, or the street, or the location, or the time. So it's a real challenge to decode people's memories accurately, and what you end up finding as the truth often is a far cry from what the memory was.
Yes, one of my great memories on the automobile searching. I stopped at a gas station in Colorado, by the way, up by Leadville. And I got talking to a fella, and I was really excited. He described, and I carried a car spotter's guide, and he described this car. I showed him the picture. He said, "Yeah, that's what it is." It was a Kaiser Darren sports car. And it was hell getting back to where he told me. I got stuck in the mud with my truck, all kinds of things. And I found a Datsun from about 1970 that somebody had cut down and made into a convertible.
Wow.
Yeah, a far cry, but
Yeah.
that's part of the adventure. John was asking if you have any plans for a book about these and your adventures.
Yeah, I think that needs to happen. It's kind of been an idea in the back of my mind since we started, and I've done a lot of research. There's still research coming in. There's others that are doing research, and it's a massive jigsaw puzzle to put together for a book. But it really should happen. It really should. And I think in the next few years, you'll definitely see me working on a project like that. So that's exciting. Great question. It really does need to happen.
I agree. Well, John, that's a good question. John has a question. He says, "Is this an expensive hobby?" John, I think you probably know the answer, but I'll let Joel answer it.
Right, right. What isn't an expensive hobby these days? It's interesting. I get a lot of questions about value and so on. And back when I started this, it seemed like $5,000 was the going rate for a Muffler Man, and in those days there really weren't any new ones. There was just the originals, but of course the popularity and the demand, and you have so many people that are collectors. Doing Muffler Man, I've become aware of this whole society of people that collect vintage cars, and then you have another group that collect vintage signs and gas station pumps, and all this stuff from the 60s is just so wildly popular, and the nostalgia of it all. And it's a lot of fun to collect, to go on the hunt, and everybody wants that individual experience. So that has affected Muffler Man and changed the landscape of prices. They've certainly gone up. As there's not a ton of Muffler Men left. There's 180 or so, and most people don't want to sell theirs. So it is a bit of a scramble. It's definitely gotten a little easier with remakes being made. It's opened up the market a little bit, and people have that option. Some buyers, some collectors, they want nothing to do with it. They want an original. They want the history. They want the old photographs and the story of where their giant has been, and everything that happened to it. And then you have people that don't care. But just as a ballpark, these figures now, if you want to buy a remake, you're going to spend over 20,000. So yes, I would say it is an expensive hobby, especially for somebody who doesn't own a business. If you're wanting to buy this for your man cave or your backyard, those days are almost gone. You really need some serious backing or savings to get into the club.
What is one of the, not just international fiberglass, but what is the strangest Muffler Man fiberglass promotional figures that you've encountered?
Yeah, that's the Santa we talked about is certainly
Yes.
one of them. But there are some really unique. I'm trying to think of specifics, but there are some really unique looking giants out there. that some of them are you wonder what the artist was thinking, and then you have some other ones that are really amazing, and relatively unknown. There is a Paul Bunyan that is not a Muffler Man, but he's located at I believe it's a university or a education school of some kind, south of Chicago. I forget the name of the place exactly, but what an incredible work of art, and probably 4 times the size of a Muffler Man there in Illinois. So there's really some amazing, statues, advertising statues out there that are almost undiscovered. Yeah, I've run across a lot. I should make a list. And really, I should do more videos into these unique giants. These one-offs, there's a lot of figures that we're finding, like 3 and 4. Indiana, the Corey statues, we call them Corey statues. They were gas station men that were about 20 feet high that stood almost completely in Indiana, and they were made locally in the state. We've really dug into some history there. There was they took the mold and they made a unique Frankenstein creation for a restaurant in Gary,
yes.
Indiana. That one, yeah, that one got a lot of attention, and we spent quite a bit of time in the last year or two, hunting for whatever became of that. But that's a really unique figure, and the mold that came from actually was used to make Uncle Sam's.
Oh, really? That Frankenberg in Gary, Indiana.
Mm-hmm.
I had forgotten all about that until it was brought up. I believe you mentioned it at the Miles of Possibility conference, and that brought back a tremendous memory. When I was really young, we used to live in southern Michigan, and would travel to Chicago pretty often. And we stopped at that restaurant at least 3 or 4 times.
Oh, wow.
And I remember that with clarity.
Yeah.
After my memory was refreshed.
Yeah. That one always gets a lot of interest, and that's another picture, just like the Porter, Santa picture, that circulates on Facebook and social media, and everyone wants to know what happened to it. So unfortunately, that giant's no longer with us.
That one was a tragic story,
mm-hmm.
like Gary itself. Yeah, that's gosh darn it, that's a tremendous. Well, the Porter Chevrolet statue, of course, that didn't last long at all. And what happened to it? It was just destroyed or taken down and gone.
Yeah, we don't really know. We know that the whole agreement was that it couldn't be there more than 2 or 3 weeks. And so it was never planned to be there very long. And of course, there was a tragic, event that happened. It really wasn't the Santa's fault or the dealership's fault, but just bad timing and a freak accident. But we really don't know a whole lot about what became of it. We assume that it was taken down. Maybe a few pieces were saved. Maybe that face was saved. We every year we still discover things that were saved. Muffler Men heads or arms or feet or and pieces of other statues that were made. Often people didn't throw away the key parts, and so hopefully the amount of stuff that's in Grandma's garage is still there to keep me busy till I'm done doing this. But you'd be surprised. You think you found it all, and you really haven't. So who knows? Maybe there's pieces of that guy still out there.
The museum in Atlanta, I know it's kind of embryonic, but I am really looking forward to watching the evolution of this. That promises to be something quite spectacular.
Yeah, me too. I'm with you. I think it's really kind of a miracle it exists. I certainly am not a big businessman with deep pockets to create these things, but a partnership with the Atlanta Betterment Fund and my passion for the Giants and their history and telling their story and my collection, which really I never set out to ever collect a bunch of Muffler Men. It just kind of goes with the territory. When you're digging for these, you're able to find them, and oftentimes you're able to purchase them. And I'm glad I did that during a time when they were cheaper. But
Yes.
I can have the collection there, to make an attraction like that, and so it benefits the area, and the small town there, and it's really exciting to work on it. We're bringing in some more giants. We've got a carpet Viking coming in this year, and a fully restored Phillips 66 cowboy, as well as some smaller things from International Fiberglass. So I'm with you. It's really fun to watch that little tiny museum grow, and we really get a lot of positive feedback from the visitors. So I think they enjoy the experience.
I work with a lot of international tour groups, and that's become a real point of interest for these
Mhm.
tours. It
Yeah.
really intrigues people. Because it's I believe it's uniquely an American form of advertisement. I don't think this was something you saw much overseas, was it?
Well, it's certainly, the Muffler Man is certainly American, but I would say that the idea is completely American. I think we'd be surprised, and maybe this is a future episode I should do, but I think we would be surprised at Americans to see how many figures and statues and unique one-offs are located in other countries around the world. Muffler Men really struggled to leave the United States. There's only a few that are in other countries. But if you go to those other countries, I was just watching a video yesterday from Australia of some of their giant statues that the
Hmm.
Australians stop and visit at on their road trips. So no, it wasn't just America. I think we did a fantastic job of riding that wave in the 60s with companies like International Fiberglass, and really pumping America full of fiberglass advertising. And I'm not sure the other countries did it to that extent, but they certainly did. I should make mention of there was a family vacation theme park. What was the name of that in England? It sounded like Buttons or something like that. But they had multiple locations with like a large pool, and they took advantage of a lot of these fiberglass figures. In fact, we have recently discovered that molds were made and sent to England, and they had a fiberglass shop that was creating a lot of the same figures that we have in the United States: the SO tiger, the crazy cow. A lot of these fiberglass figures we think were just here in America, they were actually being made in England, and put at different amusement parks and such. So it wasn't just here. It was happening in Europe as well, and Canada.
Well, I just flashed. I could picture Joel's grand adventure in the UK in
Right.
search of giants.
Yeah.
Yeah, Sure. It just intrigues me immensely, and I'm glad to see they're so popular again. I think the Gemini Giant there in Illinois, the sale and the threatened destruction of it, that really sparked um, a tremendous interest in these statues. I think that was another great awakening moment.
Yeah, it's not a dull hobby to follow, that's for sure. Sometimes, the human element, coupled with the giant figures, really, is a combination for high interest, and a lot of talk on social media. We certainly saw that happen with the Gemini giant, and what an amazing, the only spaceman we know of to survive, and the most popular and well-known Muffler Men of them all. Yeah, it's never a boring journey with the Giants.
No, no, and the revival, the Renaissance of Route 66 has really, like you say, sparked the Highway Cafe there in Veneta, Oklahoma. The work they're doing in Galena with their statues. Um, yeah, there's just so many different. The Highway Cafe, but you mentioned Buck Adams in Tulsa.
Hmm. Hmm.
Uh, I wonder if the one there used to be a car dealership in Gallup, New Mexico that had one of the cowboys. I wonder if that's still there. I'll have to
It
add that
is.
to my list.
It is. It's yeah, it's one of the it's on Route 66 and it's one of the retired Phillips 66 Cowboys.
It's been repurposed for auto sales.
Right. Well, it looks about the same as it did other than the paint job, but yeah, it's on the roof there and used by a car dealership. Yep. Or used car lot.
This is all intriguing. I just encourage people to follow your YouTube channel because to do this vicariously is really good, and it's real simple. It's just youtube.com at American Giants. But I really encourage people to become a follower of this because, well, I think it would open people's eyes to road tripping a little bit different, and well, you never know what you're going to find, like you said, in a farmer's field or a barn or a yard sale or.
Right? Yeah.
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 Joel, I really appreciate you taking time from your schedule this morning to do this. I was just was ever since we met and I've watched your presentation, I've just been so intrigued by your exploits and your attempt to shine the spotlight on this advertising history and well, to give some of these fellas a new lease on life.
Yeah, yeah, and that's been a privilege, and I never expected the restoration side of it, but I think that helps. I think that helps catch people's interest. We all like seeing restoration, and videos where you're bringing a little bit back, of the 1960s, and I think that's really important to rescue these guys. They don't last forever. They are fiberglass. It does crack. It does come apart. So it's been fun to be involved in the restoration part of it, and that's something people can really appreciate too.
Well, that's got to be an undertaking and a half, the restoration, because, like you said, not only just the elements in time, but vandalism of these. I can just imagine how many of these ended up for target practice when they'd outlived their usefulness.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. It was a real problem, and it's interesting because we tend to feel like our current day and age is as bad as it gets, and we talk about the good old days. But with these giants, the good old days were not as good as it is today. The 1970s. I don't know what it was about that period of time, but vandalism and jokes regarding the giants taking their axes, stealing their heads, knocking them down, dragging them to your opponent's high school and putting it up on the roof of their high school was hanging these giants from the overpass of the interstate. The 1970s really was the pinnacle of torture for Muffler Men, and it happened often. These days, it's very quiet. You would think, everyone would think it'd be much worse, but it's not. It seems like mischief is being made in other areas, but the giants are generally unscathed, not completely. But man, the newspaper articles I have discovered from the 70s and 80s of all these pranks that were taking place. It was not a time of peace for the Giants.
Well, at the time they had probably so little value, but now, well, gosh, they are such a valuable little item. Destruction doesn't figure into the picture quite as much. It's amazing how some of these things, they lose their value and they become the targets of, like you said, pranksters and vandals.
Yeah, yeah, I think times have just changed. Now those people are involved in other kinds of mischief, and it took a lot of work. I don't think those who are going around trying to cause trouble are willing to spend the energy and the effort that they did in the 70s to remove a 20-foot colossal Paul Bunyan, which was a huge job even for those who were doing it for fun.
Well, even though they're made of fiberglass, these things cannot be. And I know they were put together. They came, in parts, like you said, heads and different pieces. But that's still, just the weight. These things can't be light.
Yeah, yeah, they weigh a few 100 pound, and some of them came with the steel structure inside, so that of course added to it. So no, it was no small feat, and a lot of these pranks ended on the side of the road, far from the destination where the pranksters were headed.
I can only imagine. Joel, I greatly appreciate this, and one more question I just come to mind. I imagine you find pieces here and there as well that you're salvaging. Heads, hands, arms, legs,
Sure,
parts. Yeah,
sure,
part.
yeah. Though I mean, that was natural when these were often taken down in the 70s and 80s and discarded. It was almost guaranteed that a part of the giant was going to be saved. And the heads and the arms were great things to save. These items were also stolen, and so they show up today. They show up in collections. Sometimes you're lucky enough to find them on Facebook Marketplace, and so yeah, we do. We have people contact us and say, my grandfather had this thing in the garden and it's still there, and we really don't know what it is, and we saw one of your videos, and we realized you might be able to help us figure out what's in our garden, and I've gotten a bunch of those emails, and they're always fun to look at the pictures of what they have and identify what Muffler Man version it came from.
When I publish this later today, I will include your contact information, your email for the American Giants Museum. Uh, in case that people, the American Giants Museum at gmail.com, I'll include that when I publish this afternoon, as well as a link to your YouTube channel. And I encourage people, if you happen to know where some of these pieces are or whole statues, to contact Joel. We need a central repository where these fellows can find a good home.
I
And you're,
appreciate that. Yeah, happy to hear from anybody.
and you're it. You're the repository. Uh, Joel, thank you so very much for this today. I for one, have really enjoyed this. You've piqued my imagination even more about these. I look forward to. Well, I first want to encourage you to work on that book, and I'll look forward to adding that to the library when it's published.
Awesome. Yeah, I really appreciate it. Thanks for time. Thanks for talking to me at the Miles of Possibilities conference, and for I think we planned this a few months ago, so it's the day finally arrived. But it's been a pleasure to be on your program here, and happy to talk about the Giants anytime.
Well, if you come up with anything that we can help promote, just let us know. You want to join us anytime here, share a new discovery or more updates on the museum, you got an open invitation. We'd sure love to hear from you.
Thank you. Yeah, appreciate that.
You bet. Yeah, before we wrap this up, I'll give you a sneak peek next week. What we're going to do is talk to Marlo Anderson. He's kind of a colorful fellow. He's best known for the National Day calendar and programs related to that. But he's got a couple other things he's involved with, such as app development and an absurdities podcast program, and kind of a multi-talented fella. And we will be talking about all of his projects. And I met with him the other day. I won't get into details because I'll let him share this, but National Road Trip Day 2026. We're going to be he's looking for a place to hold a major festivities. Since that's the 100th anniversary of Route 66, what better place to celebrate the great American road trip than on the main street of America? Should be a lot of fun. And, speaking of road trips, I got to give a shout out to the folks who helped make this program possible. And we'll start with, speaking of England, we were talking earlier, Route Trip USA. They're a British-based company that specializes in American and Canadian road trips. And they do package tours with a tweak. They'll customize it for you. And they're very, very knowledgeable. They take a lot of these trips themselves. They're like us. They taste the enchiladas and test the pillows before they tell you where to go. And if they don't know, they keep a lot of consultants on the string to help develop tours. And I'm very proud to be one of those consultants to help with their Route 66 tours and Southwest tours. And of course, give a shout out to Connie Eccles, the Wagon Wheel Motel in Cuba, Missouri. Not only a good friend and a great host, but she kind of exudes the enthusiasm and the magic that makes a Route 66 trip magical. And the Wagon Wheel Motel is kind of a unique experience. It's one of the oldest continuously operated motels on Route 66. And then we have Angela Moreland out in McLean, Texas. She has the Cactus Inn Motel, celebrating 5 years of ownership now. That's kind of a neat little 1950s time capsule. Well, McLean isn't a ghost town, but it's kind of headed that direction. But if Angela has her way, that's going to get turned around. She also has a tap room downtown. And even though she's not affiliated, right next door to her Cactus Inn Motel is the Red River Steakhouse. So it makes for a great stop. One of my great go-to places on Route 66 is the delightful Roadrunner Inn in Tucumcari, New Mexico. David Brenner and his team have done an incredible job of turning a historic property, a derelict property, into an award-winning destination. And I can highly recommend a stay at the Roadrunner Lodge Motel. It is an example of that time travel is possible. Ask David for a tiki room. And it's a great place. Another thing with the Roadrunner, it's a great place. Tucumcari is known for its neon, and but people miss a lot of the other things there. So get yourself a room at the Roadrunner, step back to the 1960s, have a good dinner at Dell's, and spend a day exploring Tucumcari. And before you set out on exploration, reserve a second night. You might need it because you can spend a day pretty easy exploring Tucumcari and the surrounding area. And then we have, of course, Vicki Ashcraft as a great sponsor. She has the Enchanted Trails Trading Post and RV Park just west of Albuquerque along Route 66. It's a 1940s trading post. It's a travel trailer museum and a full-service modern RV park all rolled into one. And as a bonus, Vicki is really passionate about supporting the Route 66 community. She's been associated in one form or another with the Route 66 Association of New Mexico for years, and she's dedicated herself to ensuring travelers have a great experience and to promoting the road and to building a sense of community along the Route 66 corridor. Well, that kind of gets you up to speed. And Joel, again, thank you. And I want to thank everybody who joined us this morning. And we'll get this published up this afternoon so we can share it and get the word out. And well, keep your eyes out for giants. They might be lurking where you least expect it. And so we'll do this again next week, about the same time. John, thank you. Yes, we've got some good ones coming up. We've got, like say, Marlo Anderson next week. And the week after, we're going to be talking to Sarah Elizabeth with Kingman Main Street. They've done some great projects here in Kingman, Arizona. But this new one has really got me excited. They're starting working with the Henderson family facade renovation on the historic Hotel Beale. And this is long overdue. That's an incredible property. We'll be talking about that as well as the history of the Hotel Beale that includes a direct connection with Buster Keaton, a little Hollywood history, Charles Lindbergh, Amelia Earhart, Will Rogers, Tap Duncan, a legendary Western lawman and gunfighter. So got lots of stuff coming up there. I have a question that just popped up here as a text message because we had asked to have, we were going to have Kaiser Barthuli of the National Park Service Route 66 Corridor Preservation Program director with us, but recent government situations she's had to postpone. Hopefully we can get that back on schedule soon. Well, until we meet again, my friends, we will bid you adios with a little music from our friends Joe and Woody and the boys of the road crew. Until we meet again next week, my friends, vaya con Dios. Adios.
Say hello to a new friend on an old road. Take a 2-lane trip of memories into mysteries unknown. Come along for the ride. Jim Hinckley's America. Jim Hinckley's America.